Good morning. Namo Namaha. I, R. Krishnan Bhatt, student of Indian Knowledge Systems at Bhishma. I'm recording my study on varied non-Vedic sources to IKS with a special emphasis on Sikhism. Now, the question comes, why is the study important? What am I going to do in this study? Generally, when we talk about Indian knowledge systems, it is the Vedic sources that are quoted and it is the Vedic sources that are taken for granted. However, the subcontinent that is India has seen so many Piscivorous tendencies and also birth of great systems of thought that to say only Vedic knowledge contributed to Indian knowledge system would be incomplete in a way. Also, the embracing pluralism that has been the ethos of this land is something that we have to cherish and celebrate because this pluralism is what makes India India. Compared to any other country in the world, India has got such a heterogeneous population mix and with so many dialects, languages, and religions that it becomes unfathomable for some people to understand what India is. To quote one of the greatest American economists and ambassador to India, Gail Galbraith, called India a functioning anarchy. India was never a functioning anarchy, but what appears to a Western mind is how it is able to pull together and function totally. That's something the Western mind is not able to fathom. So here we go of studying non-Vedic sources of Indian knowledge system with a special emphasis on Sikhism because in today's relevance, Sikhism has become a very powerful established religion, not only in India, but throughout the world. But Sikhism was born at a very crucial time in the history of India, and this also has got a very special relevance because Sikhism started with a very feeble note and later consolidated into one of the most powerful cults or what can you say religious systems that was an answer to the Islamic invasion in the Middle Ages. Let's now look at what is Indian knowledge system and how India's traditional knowledge is called what is known as Indian knowledge system. Now, what is this traditional knowledge? From where does it come? This is one civilization, or India is one civilization that has been continuous. Perhaps China is one civilization which still is continuing, but the entire landscape of the culture and aspects of China have changed. Now let us see what exactly is Indian civilization. Indian civilization basically was one of the best civilizations ever. And it was so advanced in all aspects of human endeavor that it sometimes becomes difficult even now to believe how it was possible. The Kailasa temple is one such illustration of what technology and artistic ability and also workmanship India possessed at that time. There are many examples to say that advanced tools were used and scientific tools were used in India, and at that time They were capable of very advanced thinking and endeavors, which even today, some of it cannot be replicated. Basically, the West has a very different mindset. They believe in monotheism, order, and regularity and patterns. For them, everything should be orderly, everything should be very arranged, it should be constructed in a proper way, and they simply cannot accept anything that is not organized. The idea of a beautiful garden is a garden which is manicured and taken care of. A free flowing forest is not acceptable to a Western mind. And the Western mind has always embraced monotheism, believes in one book, one God, one system, one church, and believes that man is the center of all creation. In stark contrast to this framework, the Indian philosophical framework embraced and advocated pluralism right from the word go. It established a fundamental plurality of existence, and in Indian intellectual discourse, plurality is basically the acceptable credo. The plurality synthesizes the universal, and it also in turn accepts individuality and embraces individuality. However, the individualism is part of the universalism and not standalone from the universalism. That is the basic concept of Indian approach to all frameworks. The Indian framework proceeds from the concrete to the abstract. Whereas in the Western outlook, the abstract has hardly played a very, very important role, except say in the 20th century, in the later part of the 20th century, and in the early part of 21st century, when so many evidences are available to them that it challenges all their concepts of the concrete. Whether the concrete is from the abstract or the abstract is inbuilt within the concrete has been a philosophical question that has been dealt from long time back. Nachiketa's dialogue of a big tree within the seed is an example of the philosophical framework on which Indian system is built upon. And the Indian system has got very clear constructed dialogues and a question and answer paradigm which is validated through a very rigorous tradition of examination inquiry. These systems are fundamentally empirical, with the Brahmand or the cosmos serving as a principal subject of study. And one most important point is all forms of life integrate the divine consciousness. Man is not the crown of creation as per the Indian thinking system. What are the non-Vedic sources of Indian knowledge ethos? From where does they come? One of the most important non-Vedic source of Indian knowledge system is Buddhism. Buddhism's contribution to the Indian knowledge system is unparalleled and inestimable. Perhaps Gautama Buddha brought in a new psychological perspective to the spiritual pursuit in India. Apart from this, his credo of non-violence is something that is even futuristic today, and how futuristic it should have been at that time. So a simple study of Buddhism and its contribution to Indian knowledge system has been incorporated in the paper or in the project. The next important contribution comes from Jainism. Jainism takes human life and the dignity of human life to a different level. Not only life, all life forms are so much integrated in Jain system that it becomes very difficult for us to understand and appreciate it even today. Jainism is perhaps a very, very austere religion with very strict practices and very strict systems to seek the ultimate truth. Jainism has got remarkable contribution to the Indian knowledge system in all areas: language, literature, art, architecture, culture, name it, and Jainism has got a lot of contribution. Jainism is still a living religion today, though the numbers are very small. The third is tribal cultures. Perhaps next to Africa, India is the next country in which we have the largest population of tribals spread almost the entire geographical area between the length and breadth of Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And these tribals carry with them years and thousands of years of wisdom and knowledge that has come in many ways. And it merits a discussion. It is noteworthy to say that today our president, Honorable Draupadi Murmu, is a tribal, and recently she inaugurated a tribal knowledge workshop in which a lot of importance was given to tribal knowledge and tribal knowledge systems which form part of Indian knowledge system. After a brief discussion on this, we have a discussion on the historical background or backdrop that gave birth to Sikhism. The Middle Ages are called the Dark Ages, and these ages where the sovereigns were butchers. They believed only in exploitation and killing, and killing was some sort of a game which was indulged in such massive proportions. A kind of army descended from the Middle East, from Afghanistan, other parts of Arabia, with a different philosophy and a different approach to human culture. These invaders set India in a clock that went hundreds of years behind. It became more of jungle kingdoms where Islam was got by the sword, and anything local or anything that is remotely non-Islamic was considered to be fit enough to be destroyed and replaced by Islam. Whether this was a deliberately adopted posture or whether it was a religious dictum is left to discussion by experts, and it is not fit enough for us to consider that question because the objective of this study is something very different. But suffice to say that they destroyed the entire cultural edifice of the country and held the sword, butchered people mercilessly, destroyed temples, temples and other edifices and built mosques over them overnight. From Delhi onwards till South India, this took place at different times for the next 300-400 years till the English came and ruled until the end of Mughal Empire. However, this also has to be looked into another, irrespective of the religious affiliation, all of them exploited the masses, and the social state of affairs was very, very, to say the least, very pathetic, and uh, we could say it disillusioned a lot of people, and faith had gone, and people had become skeptics. It is during this time that the Bhakti movement started. Sanatan Dharma, as usual, threw up a galaxy of people or monks or saints, whatever you want to call them, who at that point of time countered a lot of philosophical and other religious practices which had divided the Hindu faith and made it lose its vitality. Adi Shankara almost replaced the existing Sanatan Dharma faith on monotheism. He advocated strict monotheism, and his Dvaita philosophy at that time almost came parallel to Islamic ideals of one God. And this is one of the most important contributions that came during the Bhakti movement, which reinforced the Vedic concept of one God, one creator, and brought people back to the Vedic thinking, which was otherwise gone many ways. Apart from Shankaracharya, we had Madhvacharya, we had a number of leaders, saints who just appeared in different landscapes of India. We had uh, people like Kabir, we have people like Guru Nanak, who also came in a very, very new form. Apart from these Bhakti saints who practiced pure devotion and who said nothing is important more than devotion, and surrender of oneself to God is the ultimate faith. This changed the very ritualistic approach that prevailed at that time, and we have so many uh, saints who practice this at different points of time at different times. It's not possible to recollect all the names, but right from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Kabir to Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, and other people, we had these saints who came in large numbers. And the Middle Ages at that time was called the Bhakti movement, or it had the Bhakti movement that came in quite a lot. The religion that was practiced based on many rules and regulations were replaced by pure, simple devotion. And this was one of the movements that re-strengthened Sanatana Dharma at that time. Sikhism is perhaps the answer to Middle Ages of India, where Sanatana Dharma faced its biggest threat of extinction, because all edifices and practices were dismantled and replaced by Islamic practices that happened at that time. However, we had a few kings and kingdoms, Hindu kingdoms, along with the emergence of Shivaji, the Maratha king, and the emergence of other kingdoms, which to an extent restored the semblance of balance at that point of time. To talk about Sikhism, Sikhism grew as a pure devotional faith or originated as pure devotional faith with a synthesis of all religions or all religious texts and concepts put together. However, the basic difference was from Guru Nanak to the almost sixth Guru, they believed in Namjap and that the name of God is most important and bhakti was most important and devotion was most important. And this faith slowly transformed itself into a very organized, militaristic and regimented type of faith in course of time. Sikhism is singularly responsible for restoration of many Hindu practices at that time, and it was the Sikh gurus who have been at that time martyrs for Sanatan Dharma as well as their beliefs to Mughal kings. This paper delves very deeply on all the aspects of Sikhism, right from the birth of Guru Nanak to today, and also looks into their practices and their contribution to IKS. It is sincerely believed that an alternative look also into other aspects was an important requirement of looking into the corpus of Indian knowledge system and different sources of this corpus, so that we can constantly enhance and enrich this Indian knowledge system corpus. Thank you.